We had fireworks on Capitol Hill when Anthony Fauci testified before the Senate, and he pled the fifth 111 times, and he was roundly scolded by the senators that were in attendance. And some of the highlights of this are quite eye-opening because they really told Fauci off and spoke for millions of Americans who want justice over the COVID pandemic response. And Dr. Anthony Fauci's words, well, they were quite impactful during the entire time. But as we saw with recently released documents that are being referred to as a Fauci diary, the nation's top COVID doctor was saying things in private that did not match what he was telling the public. This goes towards all sorts of controversial subjects that we don't need to delve into too far here. I'm sure people who are watching me are pretty much on the same page that the entire response was botched and faith in science and medical authority was severely undermined. And that is something that Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri pointed out in a scathing diatribe. Let's take a look.
With your time, you could sit for InStyle magazine, but you can't answer questions for the American people. You could sit for InStyle magazine, but you're here taking the fifth. You could sit for InStyle magazine and get $1 million in cash awards. But now the cat's got your tongue. I bet he does. I tell you what, here's my conclusion from all of this. This was really all about you the whole time. Somewhere along the way, you lost your way. You may have been a good public servant at one time. I don't know. But what I can tell you from reading your emails now, from looking at what you did, how you used your employees, somewhere along the line, it became all about you. You became a narcissist and a megalomaniac and a liar. And you've lied to the American people, and you've lied to this body. And you've disgraced your profession by doing it. You called yourself the most famous scientist in the world. You've done more to harm science than anybody in my lifetime. And I hope you'll go home and write that in your diary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Now, even more colorful and laden with some profanity was the rant of Senator Bernie Moreno from Ohio. He really had the how dare you vibe going with this, and it is something that I believe a lot of Americans want to tell Fauci. Where does he get off? Well, let's listen to Senator Moreno.
Of that stadium and arrested. Those policies were put in place because you had moronic politicians that listened to the words of a megalomaniac who was more interested in having met a Kardashian than the suffering of the American people, and that is you. Your advice to communities like that, to idiotic politicians who enforce those rules, arrested that mom for watching a football game with her own family outside. When that story broke, I said to myself, I cannot stand idly on the side and watch this happen. It was about 6 years ago today that I decided I'm going to give up my businesses, sell them all, run for office, run for the United States Senate. Here I am sitting in front of you 6 years later saying, who the fuck do you think you were for doing that? It is a total disgrace what you did to this country. And if my Democrat colleagues are standing there defending you, I hope the voters of the United States of America watch the clips of every one of you doting on a guy who was more interested in being a celebrity than saving American people.
Now, another outburst didn't come from a Republican senator during this theatrical display, but from one of Fauci's lawyers, and Dr. Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky. He had him removed by security, and this is definitely worth watching.
The benefits of gain-of-function research outweigh the risks.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
The chairman has denied your assertion of privilege and directed you to answer. but you nonetheless refuse and stand on privilege despite the existence of the pardon. The committee will have to consider, after this hearing, what appropriate action should be taken against you for the failure to testify after being directed to do so. It's against the law to obstruct an investigation of Congress. There will be repercussions to your refusal to testify today. Senator Peters. You're not recognized. You're not recognized. If you are unruly, you will be removed from the proceeding. You are not recognized, and you are not recognized, sir. Sir, you are not recognized. You are not recognized. Security, we'll hold off. But you will respect these proceedings. You were told not to sit at the table. You insist on sitting at the table, and we told you you would not be recognized. You are not invited here for testimony, sir. You are being disruptive. Would you behave this way in a courtroom? No, because the judge would put you in jail. I can't do that today, but I can have you escorted from the premises. So I would say, sir, sit quietly and don't say another word. I said, sit quietly. You are not recognized. Another word and you're gone.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear what the attorney has to say.
He is not recognized by the committee or the chair. If he speaks again, he will be removed from the room. This testimony is from Anthony Fauci. This is not a game with his lawyers. He can advise. His lawyers can give him advice. He's got a half dozen here. They're all allowed to talk to him.
Yes.
All right? Yeah. But the attorneys are not recognized. In fact, the attorney was told not to sit at the table, and he's not obeying that recommendation. There's a row behind you, sir. That's where you were told to sit, and you're not. And now you're disrupting the proceedings. And so, look, this is the way Anthony Fauci wants to be remembered, for a lawyer not listening to the rules. That's the way you want to be remembered, and that's what you're going to do. You are not recognized, sir.
Now, are we going to see anything except strongly worded letters and public theatrics over Dr. Anthony Fauci? Will he be held accountable for some of his wrongdoing? Well, the auto pen pardon that was granted by former President Joe Biden, or at least his auto pen, was something that extended back to 2014 and covered potential crimes that may be brought against Dr. Fauci. This sort of presidential pardon is unprecedented, and at least before the Biden administration, and it hasn't been tested in court, and it may very well be unconstitutional according to a strict reading of the Constitution and the President's Clause there about pardons. And so now we are getting questions, well, did Dr. Anthony Fauci abuse his privilege to plead the Fifth Amendment? Because it protects you against prosecution about potentially criminally compromising your defense. And this is not the case if you're covered by a pardon. So he may be very much guilty of contempt of Congress. And 111 times, well, that is a lot of contempt for the Congress. And it didn't seem like Fauci was so boastful and arrogant. He was shaking throughout the hearing. He seemed very trepidatious. And his 6 lawyers there apparently were sweating what could have happened during his testimony. And so we'll have to see if, like Kentucky Senator Rand Paul said, they hold a contempt of Congress vote next week in committee. That could lead to a fine and theoretically at least 1 year imprisonment. That is the least that Dr. Anthony Fauci could face for his extensive wrongdoing during the COVID pandemic response. But don't take my word for it. All you have to do is go look at the diary yourself and what he had to say, and try to tune out all the times he talks about Julia Roberts and all the celebrities that he met and hobnobbed with, and his megalomaniacal love letters to himself. Put that aside and look simply as a comparison between what he was writing down that he thought was private, except it was on a government server, obviously, and that which he was telling the public. They are wildly discordant, and they cannot be simply compatible for any type of reasonable assessment of what Dr. Fauci truly believed was going on during the pandemic. So, Wayne, what are your thoughts about this? Do you think that all of this political theater is useful? Does it generate any public sentiment? Is it just electioneering? Could it lead to contempt of Congress charge against Fauci? We know every single Democrat will vote against it. They do not hold their own side accountable ever. They're worse than Bolsheviks in this regard. At least Stalin, he had right-wing and left-wing deviationists during the Great Purges. The left does not punish anyone on their side at all, and that is just encouraging a lot of craziness and bad behavior, because they just stick together like a gang, and they don't hold anyone accountable no matter what they do. The only sin is not being able to win re-election, like we saw with Graham Plattner, and all boils down to power. They will do anything and say anything to get it, and their refusal to respect the rights of American citizens that were violated during the response, and in part due to the advisement of Dr. Anthony Fauci, is disturbing. It shows that they don't respect us or our rights, and they need to be held accountable during elections, because they will not do anything about Dr. Anthony Fauci. They don't care what he does. They will lie like Senator Gary Peters did. He had a lot of grandstanding about Fauci today, and much of it was spurious and irrelevant. A lot of accusations that were not backed up by facts, such as the documents not being available to the Democrats. Well, they were posted on a public website, and they also had a certain area where they could access it with a code that they didn't request. They wanted no part of holding Fauci accountable. So they just make up these crusades for accountability, which are dead ends. They're witch hunts, and they involve President Donald Trump because they can't seem to get it out of their mind that the American public needs their problem solved, and they need to stop hearing about the scapegoating of the president for every problem under the sun. It seems to be their blanket excuse not to do anything to hold anyone accountable who is a critic of President Trump or someone who doesn't go along with him. And this boogeyman excuse is getting very old. And they need to put the public ahead of their anger and spite for Republicans like Donald Trump. But it doesn't seem like that's going to happen anytime soon, with the DSA-aligned radicals that are jumping to the forefront of the Democratic Party at this point. So weigh in with your thoughts about the story. What do you think about this theatrics? We always appreciate hearing from you.